All right, who wants to go first?
I'm happy to go first. Mine is probably a bit more orphaned from other stuff. Or I guess, Ray, you could as well, because yours is very front-end heavy.
Yeah. Either way.
I'm ready to go. I can just jump right in.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm going to present two things. One is not my creation, and the other one is what I've been working on for most of the past 2 weeks. I'll start with the builder dashboard. So I think a couple weeks ago, we might have shared this on demo day. If not, we definitely talked about that as a team. But it's a dashboard that the OP Labs team and foundation wanted to create to identify how projects are coming and going across their ecosystem of, I don't know, hundreds of different projects. And what they did was they basically took a pretty scrappy notebook that I put together in a couple hours that was powered by a Google Sheet. And they basically went very deep into analyzing different cohorts, creating metrics about them, looking at segmentation, churn analysis, et cetera. And the really amazing thing is they were able to do all of that with no additional data. Everything that they needed was there in our time series metrics and in a few kind of basic high-level tables that map projects to different grants and different chains. So I'll kind of walk through some of the analysis that they shared here. What's that?
Could you highlight, because I know you demoed this last demo day as well. Like, can you highlight what's different or what's
Yeah, I'll jump into that. There's a lot that's different. I would say that previously, all that I gave them, were these summary tables, effectively. So I showed them, here's the code. Here are some very, very basic heuristic-based metrics that allow you to categorize projects. And then here's the raw data that you would need. So obviously, the hard part is actually getting all the raw data to line up. That took, I guess you could say, 2 years of work to get to that point. But it basically includes all the different grants that they've given out. This is powered by a spreadsheet. We also have the retrofunding metrics, which are powered by retrofunding metrics. And then we have all of the time series stuff as well. So all the raw data is coming from the OSO pipeline. Originally, what we've done is just have 3 categories, again, purely heuristic based. Since then, Dennis, the person who worked on this, has used a kind of machine learning approach to categorize things kind of month by month based on different activity trends. So I think I'll be able to share a bit of how that works. But effectively, there are 5 different types or clusters of builders that they care about. The big one here is the blue chips. Those are well-established, mostly DeFi protocols that drive a lot of it, on-chain economic activity. You then have a category called established and developer hubs. I think established is mainly just, teams that are kind of not quite at the blue chip level, but have had like a steady amount of activity over time. The developer hubs would include other on-chain projects that aren't really DeFi protocols. So things like account abstraction come into this category. An NFT minting platform would probably fall in this category. And then you have a couple different like lower tier ones, like emerging projects, and then low activity ones, which are really, either old or might be dying, et cetera. So those are the different categories. As you might expect, all the TVL is dominated by the blue chips because TVL is like an input into becoming a blue chip. So that's not surprising. The next thing, which is pretty cool here, is actually being able to look at how the funnel has changed year over year. This is another thing that we initially created, but then Dennis was able to refactor. So it's based on the machine learning based way of categorizing projects. And the cool thing, of course, is that you can see how much funding was given to those projects. In a separate section, you could actually deep dive and figure out, when was that funding dispersed, and did that coincide with a growth period or some uplift that might have been associated with the grant or the funding. So yeah, that's the basic high-level part. I showed you the summary tables. I think the really interesting part that I wasn't able to show last time. Yeah, what's up, Ray?
How much of the funding events are actually in our pipeline now versus out of band?
100% is in our pipeline now.
Great. Even all of the retro funding, like measurement period fund.
The only one that is missing is the most recent one.
Oh, cool. Because I noticed a PR where you removed one of them, and it sounds like you're just refactoring how it goes in or something.
I'm just clearing out the technical debt that I created. There is a little issue that I'll discuss in my second demo today around project metrics getting stale, but we can talk about that at a later point, which does affect some of the funding ones. So right now I am pulling it directly from the staging model, not the metric model, but the metric model should work once we get that issue fixed. Okay, so the cool part here, apart from the categorization, which is also cool, is this kind of different types of data analysis they did on top of the projects once they've been segmented and categorized. So one thing is to look at, again, pretty simple, but at like a very high level, which chains have the most momentum. So OP mainnet has always had a lot of activity. It came first, and then you can see that base was the next one to follow, and then others have kind of been a flash in the pan. Sonium is the one right now, which is more active. There's some reason Unichain is not showing up here. It should be in here, but it's not right now. You can also see, based on the projects that we have indexed, which is not everything, how many new deployments have they had. So I think what this tells me is that either deployments have slowed down or there's data that we are just missing because we haven't added those projects, but there is more activity that's happened recently. Now, another thing could also be that it's the same amount of new product deployments, but it's actually getting dispersed across 10 chains instead of just 2. These are all the types of things that you can imagine are pretty interesting to explore and understand.
Yeah, just as a quick side note, I think like Ruben, we've been talking about indexing the universe, and I think this is probably a really good motivation where everything we've done so far has been like, I know what I want to measure, so I'm going to go measure it. But if I don't know what I want to measure, I don't have it, and it looks like it's going down.
Yeah.
Where, like, for a lot of these types of use cases, what they actually want to use the data for is discovery. Like, what is hasn't registered yet, right?
Yeah, I think exactly. I mean, I think that's the whole reason why like indexing the universe is useful for us in general, right? So
well, one of many reasons.
It has been.
Cool. And so hopefully at some point they can present this and you can kind of see how they think about these types of things, because these lead immediately to exploratory work that you would do to answer important business questions, as you can imagine. This one, I don't actually really understand what it means. I think it kind of gets at, because it kind of looks all the way back in time, it really just correlates with how long the chain has been around. So I don't think it's actually that interesting. This one is very interesting. So you can basically see, it's like a loose proxy for the rate of innovation. So how many new products are popping up that are less than 3 months old in a given month? One of the hypotheses that we want to test over time is, if you improve the developer tooling landscape, if you make it so that there are small grants for fast-growing builders, can you change this? And obviously, you'd want to see, let's say that there's a program that's happening on Ink chain, you'd want to be able to correlate whatever funding is happening with a lot of new projects showing up over time, or over that period when the incentive is running. So I think this is a really cool one to look at. Market leadership. So this is actually looking like the turnover among the top projects. And I think this would probably require a bit of refining, because right now it's just doing a count as opposed to like a percent and so on. But no surprise, the chains that have the most activity, Optimism and Base, also have the most turnover in terms of who the top projects are. You can kind of see this over time. Again, nothing super interesting here, I would say. One that I really like is this kind of project lifecycle. So we have a developer funnel. How long does it take for projects to kind of graduate versus churn out of the system? Again, you'd immediately want to deep dive and say, okay, does this change if they have been funded? Does this change if they are active on Base as opposed to some other chain, et cetera? But yeah, we have our our famous graph over here, which basically shows the segmentation over time across these different clusters. Very cool to see. And then you can also get a sense for how long products are staying in a given category. Of course, one of the things that they would also like to use their grant making for is to get promising emerging projects to the established or blue chip category as fast as possible and figure out what is the right amount of funding or other support that will allow them to accelerate quicker. And then I just love this Sankey, which kind of shows the flow between 2023 all the way to 2025. One thing that's probably not like a great sign is that the blue chips have been pretty static over this period. It isn't as if like a lot of new ones that have come in. And you can see like the emerging projects one, we can see how many of those have actually moved on. So emerging products in 2024, only a few made it into the blue chip category and so on. So you can kind of see over time how much activity there is. Now, another cool thing that we could do, which you didn't, would just be to segment this based on anyone who entered in 2023. What have they done? Where are they now? How many moved up the funnel? How many churned out, etc. Again, a lot of stuff you'd want to do here. This is also, looking at those migrations over time. I actually like this version of it better. So you can see, where do they start out? I think this is going back a year or so. Where are they now? Again, a lot of stickiness at the blue chip category. And then, but probably a bit better visualization. You could see where there is more momentum, hopefully upwards, but it could also be churning or moving downwards. That was kind of a lot. I can keep going on. This one isn't that useful for me. It's like 4 dimensions, so there's a lot here. But presumably you're going to see more blue chips up in the top right here. Yeah, Ray.
What percentage of this did you do versus Dennis?
0%, 1% maybe.
Amazing.
This is all Dennis.
99%, yes.
Very cool.
And then the other part, which, I'm not going to run right now because there's an error in Hex. So if I do it, it might break things. But you can basically take a project and you can see how much funding it's received. You could, see the whole history of when those grants happened. Obviously, we should show TVL or whatever metric you care about and have these as event milestones so you can see which ones are correlated with big uplifts or drops, et cetera. And then, of course, you want to rank them relative to peers and see, are they best in class? Who are their competitor set, et cetera. So just the tip of the iceberg, but you can see how, powerful this is.
Out of all the stuff that you showed, which one has been the most net new surprising insight for optimism leadership?
Well, right now, this has kind of been Dennis's side quest. So I don't think he's presented it to anyone apart from myself and Jonas.
Well, maybe what is your guess then of what is the insight that is most non-intuitive, most contrary to typical conventional thought?
I really don't know how kind of in this level of detail they are, because there's a lot of things here that are probably, the level that I'm at, where I'm looking at all these products on a day-to-day basis, and it's kind of interesting to see where they go. For me, I've always been anchored on there being a certain set of blue chip projects and very well-known projects, and kind of seeing that some of them have, sorry, where was it? Oh, sorry. Okay, I can't figure out where it is right now. One thing that I think is a bit worrying, of course, is this chart over here, that the rate of new product deployments has kind of slowed down. And then I think this one as well feels really important to understand. You would actually want to see a lot of these newer chains, which, from where I sit, never took off. There just hasn't been a lot on Bob or Frax. Metal isn't even shown here, even though we've been indexing that for over a year, as Ruben knows. So I think we kind of knew this already, but just kind of seeing in the data that there was never really sufficient traction is a pretty important signal that you need to do something in those early stages to get those chains to hopefully have some initial liquidity and traction.
And you're pretty confident this isn't they just haven't registered an OP Atlas. It's more of a persistent issue.
I mean, that's a good point. It kind of raises the other things that we should have, and I have like a pull request I'm working on right now, which will include this. There'll be some high-level chain metrics, so you can see how much TVL is there on Frax and how much contract activity or gas fees are being generated on that chain. So at the very least, you can get a sense, like if you see a lot of activity but no projects, then that means we're missing things. If you just don't see a lot of activity and you don't see a lot of projects, then I think that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, so you just mean cross-checking with DeFi Llama and GrowThePi. Yeah.
Yeah, and the superchain data itself, which I'll show in the notebooks coming up next.
Do we already calculate metrics for the universe of artifacts?
No, only for ones that are owned by a project.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we turned off.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, we turned off that artifact one. We had it at one point, but it was massive.
But incremental, right?
But incremental. This is true, and purely incremental, right? So.
And these artifacts are everything that goes into contracts v0, but so every contract, but not every GitHub repo.
It's everything in artifacts by project, which is a lot of things. Like we index.
Oh, it's not. It is not the universe. Okay.
It is not the universe. We index downstream. So I can just it's kind of in here actually. So let me jump ahead right now. So if you just look at the on-chain builders round, let me just see. I think it's mentioned here. Okay, so a total of 15,000 contracts were registered directly using contracts v0. And then through our discovery logic, where you can identify a contract that comes from either a deployer or a factory that's been registered, there's another 4 million or so that we've included here. So it's a lot of artifacts. And that's just the OP Atlas portion. So if we throw in our own, it's probably, some big number on top of that. Maybe 10 million or so. Great, let me move on to the next thing. So I have 2 draft blog posts that are queued up. One is looking at retrofunding for on-chain builders. The other one is for dev tooling. I won't actually kind of read these through. These are going to be cross-posted on the governance forum, so that will be like the primary source. This will be not the canonical version. But in any case, let me just share some of the notebooks, especially if you're kind of thinking about notebook assist. This might be helpful context. One of the things that I like to use when having a big notebook is the table of contents, so you can just kind of organize things in a more logical way. There's basically like a query stage where you get all the data that you need, and you do different transformations, and then finally the visualizations. So it kind of keeps that structure throughout. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong tab. This is the notebook, and you can see over here like the structure. Yeah, the main thing that I think is kind of interesting here, there's like a first step, just getting all the projects and the round results, and then getting the dependency graph. One issue that we've had, and Ikro, I was kind of asking a few questions about performance related to this. Because we are getting artifacts that were already introduced through OSS directory, but are now being referenced again as part of an OP Atlas project, what I've observed is that the project metrics that use those artifacts start at the time they've been added to OP Atlas. They don't go all the way back in time. Even though if you look up the time series metric by artifact, you get everything from the start of time. So in order to go around that issue, you basically have to use you kind of recreate the logic of time series metrics by project, getting the artifact, identifying which projects have that artifact, and then adding everything up, which is expensive. It would fail half the time I would run this query.
I see. Or we would have to restate all of that, right?
I guess so. That's what I wasn't sure of. I thought those were supposed to be full models, so we don't need to restate them.
Oh, it's in the time series metrics, right? Isn't the time series metrics?
The time series metrics by project would have to be restated.
Have to be restated. Okay, so that's the answer.
Oh, so it is incremental.
It is incremental, but the problem is that projects. So okay, artifact stuff is pure incremental, right? So there's no notion of state.
Right.
Like the artifact doesn't change. It's the smallest granularity, right? But a project can change. It can the composition of that project can change, and that's the issue. Now, if it was a brand new artifact that was just added and just created, like brand new in the world, like that would be fine. But if it's like, oh, we were missing something, then we have to go back. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. I don't know if we've been epic for this, but we basically want time series directories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you had time series events for when artifacts are added or removed, then you can make everything incremental.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For the most part, you'd still. Yeah, I mean, there's still some goofiness there. Like you're still going to be recalculating over the same data. So sometimes, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
We can just make it way more efficient.
Okay, so yeah, that will resolve this issue. I think the big thing that Optimism cares about is kind of, and this is a hard question to answer, is basically for a given dev tool, how many developers use that dev tool, and how much gas or other economic benefits are those developers bringing to the superchain? So we try and get at that here. I'll kind of skip ahead to some of the actual more interesting analysis. But where is it? Okay, so actually, let me just switch over to the blog post. That might be easier to see. Okay, so yeah, just a quick high level, actually. There were 10 different categories of projects. The most popular one, in terms of both the number of funded projects and the amount, is the core protocol interfaces. That would include libraries like Ethers, VM, Solc, etc. And obviously, the nice thing about that is that there's usually an npm package that we can use to connect two projects together. And now, if we look at the why aren't these charts? Yeah. Oh, that's why. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just need to restart my server. Oh, sorry, it's on the other branch. Okay, never mind. That's not going to work. Let me just come back over here. So because they are packages, one of the things that we can look at is what percent of the overall package imports that we see across all the OSO come from superchain builders versus other projects in the ecosystem. It could be like an Ethereum project, it could be a Filecoin project, it could be anything, right? And so on average, what we see is that roughly 10%, 12% or so of imports are coming from superchain builders. Really popular things like Solidity and VM and Ethers are like right here at the top, where basically any Ethereum, any EVM project is going to be using it. There are some things over here which are actually pretty rare. You don't see very often in the superchain. And an example of that might be like different libp2p implementations. I think there might be a few like backends for DeFi protocols that are using that, but in general, you don't see them very commonly. And then the other extreme, you have some like really niche superchain specific tooling, which isn't used that often, but for people that do use it, 100% of them are on the superchain. So we can use that as a way of kind of getting at like how important a package is, to the superchain and then overall. And then the last thing I'll show, so this is just roughly like a distribution of how old the products are and how many active devs they have. In general, there wasn't like a super big correlation between age of project and funding, but as you might expect, ones that had like 2 or 3 people tended to get a bit more funding than some of the smaller ones. And then, okay, I'll show this one first. So you can see here, this is basically going all the way back to 2020 and just seeing how these teams have grown or stayed the same over time. These are just the products that are getting funding. So in general, like they've had pretty steady growth. We can compare this like the overall ecosystem. You can see that there are some solo maintainers that have been doing this thing for a very long time and have been pretty stable. And then obviously there are some independent full-time projects and bigger companies like Open Zeppelin that have really increased a lot over the past 3 or 4 years. And now, if we look at across, at the graph that we have between the dev tooling projects and the on-chain projects, what you can see here is that there's been like pretty steady growth even during some of the downturns across these in terms of full-time developers. This is using the Electric Capital definition of 10 days of commit activity in a given month. We can also see like overall monthly active developers. This is taking a trailing average, actually, Ruben. So like a 30-day rolling window, I think. Sorry, 3-month rolling window. And yeah, you can see again, like pretty steady growth. A ratio roughly of for every 1 dev tooling project, there are 2 on-chain developers. Yeah, we can see that ratio actually more concretely over here. And then we can do a bit of comparison. So we can look at the cohort of projects that have received funding only from Optimism, and all of their users are, as far as we know, in Optimism. We can see ones that are kind of cross ecosystem. That would be the gray bar over here. And then we can look at the projects that are kind of labeled in Electric Capital as part of Arbitrum, Polygon, ZK Sync. There's a few others that are in there. Just kind of see the trend line over time. I think like the encouraging thing is that you do see, particularly in more recent times, these projects continue to have some growth where other ecosystems have either dropped off or stagnated. Yeah, there's a lot more here, but I've already gone for half an hour. So let me pause and come back and see if there are questions. And hopefully the blog post will be merged soon and you can check them out.
How many of these do you think are going to be common types of, like how many of these are really you just did for the blog post? And how many of these are things that you want the agent to be able to respond well consistently because you think this is not going to be a one-off question? And for those types of things, like, are you adding them to the data sets?
I definitely think for the on-chain builders, there'll be recurring questions that will come up again and again. So like as an example of that, I want to compare this cohort of projects against that cohort of projects, right? That will be a very common one. I want to compare this one against another chain or another ecosystem. That type of thing I can imagine happening quite a bit. The logic here is so custom that I think it's probably not in the immediate term. But I definitely think that there's work that I would like to see helping kind of structure the analysis. So this kind of boilerplate to get your projects, get the things that you care about those projects, et cetera, feels like a stuff where a notebook assist would be really helpful. But then again, something like this center of gravity metric would be pretty specific to the round, I think. Bye, Ruben.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is the broader point is just to reemphasize for anything that you think is going to be a common query, like especially, Evan was maintaining those data sets. Like I would imagine those are things that I would love for you to be more active in contributing towards. I think that is the bridge. I don't think you should assume, oh, you did this presentation, Javi's going to know exactly what to do. No, Javi's just going to run the experiments in the data sets that he already has. And then that's when he says accuracy is 40%, you know, it's going to be just 40% on the data set that is probably stale at this point, that like doesn't reflect what you're actually thinking about, right? And so the data set, not to, you know,
Yeah.
just try to hammer this home, like that is how you guys should be communicating.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think historically, something like this, only 50%, maybe 25% will actually prove being stuff we want to do on a recurring basis. I don't quite know what that is right now. I think that looking back at some of the stuff that we were doing a few months ago with Evan around like the season 7, season 6 data, the auction ones that have informed what's in there now, those are still pretty good test cases. But yeah, absolutely. The stuff here that sticks, that will be the next horizon.
Well, in the data sets, there is also a way to annotate for any particular example what its priority is and what its categorization is, right? And so for hobby, what we might want to do in the future is kind of like start with sub-selecting just the examples that are, say, for example, high priority, and maybe accuracy for high priority examples is more important right now than getting global accuracy numbers, right? And then Carl can help rejigger priorities as they change.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. So let me quickly demo one thing. This is mostly for Carl.
Dark mode. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I already showed you this earlier last week, but the gotcha, which I just want to show you what the gotcha is real quick, which thank you, Igoro, for helping find this, is that there wasn't anything wrong with our code per se. It was just that the CSS in dark mode, like the way that Docusaurus does CSS loading is non-standard. It's like lazily loaded, and there are certain things that, so it doesn't respect order at which you put CSS in your document. And so that breaks a lot of things. That does depend on insertion ordering. And so the way that you get around that in Plasmic is, I mean, light mode is light mode. So just, you know, do your light mode thing. I also updated the cards so that if you just insert a card and use the card, it should be fine. But if you're creating new components, the trick here is to try to do things that make it more resistant to CSS reordering. And so the convention we have right now is for light mode, the background is white and you can add shadows and whatnot. For dark mode, the background is transparent so that you can, what's it called? Yeah, just inherit the dark mode. And dark is, you know, it's not exactly black. So you actually do want to inherit the dark blackish color that whatever your system is giving you. So that's why it's transparent. And then you also want to set default styles, right? So in here, you'll see that the text color is default, but here the text color is overwritten to be white in the component itself. Anyway, that's pretty much it. But it, you know, it works. I closed Evan's tutorial page because I'm trying to get, like, first of all, he didn't use TypeScript, so it wasn't really what we wanted in the first place. But anyway, if we want to do like a visual tutorial thing, we could give that another shot. But hopefully this allows us to do things that are prettier. Like, I would argue this looks a little nicer than what we had before.
So we still have the old tutorials, which are just like a bullet point list, right?
Yeah, Evan had a in-flight PR.
No, I know the one, but this is still there. Yep, cool.
Yeah, I closed it yesterday because I think the thing he wanted to do was just kind of split them into categories, which I think is pretty easy. But the visualization, we probably want to take another stab at. Cool. Yeah, and I'll get this on the recording for Ruben. He might be interested in this. I think I demoed this to all of you guys previously, but the Foundation's live, soft launch. And if people want to apply for fiscal hosting, this would be the link. brings you here. And you can have your collective fiscally hosted by the foundation, including open source observer. And then there's terms to the hosting here, which took forever, but I'm glad it's done now. Is all the different policies that the nonprofit has to make sure that we're compliant, like don't do political activity and other things.
On-chain political activity.
What's that?
What about on-chain political activity?
Oh, God. Yeah, that's it. I'll keep mine short. Yeah, Javi, do you mind showing what the experimentation setup looks like now and how other people can use it?
I have some things to show, so let's start. So first of all, here, yeah, can you see my screen? Yeah. So I did a super simple mermaid diagram regarding the comparison between like the normal SQL workflow and the semantic one. So that for reference, for those folks who don't know or haven't been following my work from like closely, basically we have like two kinds of workflows. We have basic and semantic. Semantic is the one which is the semantic layer, which is basically a structured way that the agent has to like build queries without having to write SQL itself. At the end of the day, SQL is a language that was designed to try to match as much as like a human language as possible. English to be simple for developers, but really expressive. And it is something that it kind of makes sense that LLMs struggle with like generating because it's like not, tailored to like an LLM, but to a human. So by adding this abstraction on top of it, we are able to make it kind of easier for like the agent in order to generate actually correct queries. So this semantic layer basically lists the columns, and then it has a way to like apply filters, apply limits, or to apply relationships and joins by an arrow. There's like a disambiguation thing as well with two arrows, but yeah, that's out of the scope of the simple explanation. So the basic workflow, how it works is like we have this query engine tool, which Ruben wrote, and then it has this RAG past SQL generation. So it takes like all of the context, embed it, generates SQLs, one shot, everything. It extracts the SQL from the metadata that it created, and then if it's not valid, it just fails, nothing happens. But if it's valid, it executes the SQL via like the OSO client, synthesizes a response, and then creates on top of it a natural language response to answer the question, and then the evals do its work. The cool thing about this new text-to-SQL semantic is that it sort of builds on top of it. So how it works, it's first of all, we have like this natural language to semantic query step, which is basically a tool that what it does is like it shows the agent how to actually build the semantic layer. And it says, I have this problem, try to translate it to the semantic query and give me, like the specification that I need to run. Once this is done, we use this registry build SQL function to transform that specific from the agent into the SQL. And then if it's valid, oh, yes.
Quick clarification for the natural language to semantic query. Like semantic queries right now are in Python, right? Is there some way to declaratively write a semantic query in JSON?
Yes, so it's actually JSON.
JSON. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so basically, I have some, so I actually have a Rise running as well, so I may be able to show some evals. Let me check if I have some traces.
Do we have a documentation page on how to generate valid JSON and use it in PyOSO?
That's a question for Icaro. I don't know if like documentation, but I know we can do it manually. So
I think the only way is the way you did. It's not like official way of translating JSON to semantic, if that's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, like a official documentation page on how to use JSON with our semantic layer on PyOSO, right?
Yeah, this was only created for the backend, like for the agent to use. So if we want to expose this, we need to think a little bit about what the API we want to use, right? The current one is only using the agent. is not exposed to the user. The user should not be building JSON.
I see. So it's we are using the semantic library internals directly as opposed to through PyOSO, is what you're saying.
No, the agent defined his JSON interface, and the code maps from the agent JSON to the semantic layer, which is exposed to all the users. But the JSON is our internal usage only, which is not even the semantic package, it's only on the agent backend.
How do we translate the JSON to? Oh, there's just a manual translation right now.
Yeah.
From JSON to PyOSO.
Yeah.
I see. Got it. And that exists. That code base is in the OSO agent right now.
I think so.
Okay.
I think it's in the OSO semantic package, maybe. I think it's there.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Feel free to continue.
Yeah, no worries. So once that is done, we basically have this JSON object, which lists all of like the filters and the relationships and the paths that generate this semantic query. And then we just build it from the registry. So basically, it just like as Icaro said, deterministically converts our JSON into SQL, and it adds some suffixes in order to like not have columns clash due to the auto-generated nature, and some other implementation details. If that SQL is valid, it will try to execute it, and then it will go to the normal flow, which means it will like execute the client, get the results, synthesize the results, run the evals. If it doesn't right now, it's currently at 5 retries. It's hard coded like in the initialization. It's pretty simple to change. It's only for development purposes. We want to like run with more or less to see how it affects it. It's on the making. If it fails after some retries, it just like stops. It just stops. And if not, it adds error context. It's like, okay, what went wrong in this iteration? Let's try again. And then it tries to call the tool again, but this time with the SQL, like the new error. So that's mainly the two differences of how it works. I can go, let me go into like the most interactive parts. So one of like the, also semantic, yeah. So one of like the big parts is like this first step, which is converting actually the natural language to semantic query, because that's kind of where all of like that's the important task, you know, because we, at the end of the day, from semantic to SQL, that's deterministic, we can fix it. But if the semantic query is wrong itself, we are not going anywhere. So right now how it works is we have like this really big prompt, it's like around 400 lines, which basically explains the agent in depth how everything works. It explains how selects work. For example, this is an example of a semantic query. As you can see, it queries table projects and the project name, and also projects by collection joined with collections name, and then no filters. So this is, for example, an example of like the JSON that it will feed. We can take as well some filters, and this is how it's built. Some more complex ones. So once that is done, I inject here the semantic model description. This basically is entities. So right now it's hard-coded. We have an issue to make it dynamic, but here we have like a, yes, right?
Sorry, I just being a little bit cognizant of time. It's almost 10:20. I do want to make sure that like everybody understands the current setup for experiments.
Yeah.
More so than what needs to be done for the architecture.
Yes. Thank you.
The other thing I would say is like these diagrams are super useful. Like, please add them to the GitHub issue or
Docs.
like there's or the docs, right? Like there's definitely anytime you make something useful like this, just throw it directly in the docs or an issue.
Of course, I will. Yeah, thank you. I'm happy they're useful. Yes. So currently, how to run an experiment. So basically, the interface has changed. I have done some changes in how this is run. First of all, you do need the you used to need the MCP server running. You don't need it right now, because right now we're not using it anymore in the eval, so this is not needed. You need to have a RISE either running locally or running via production. You have like the key in one password. You just need to set in the environment variable, to like target production. And I'll relay what Ray told me. It's advisable if someone does experiments to like target production, they have like a rolling deletion policy, so all the experiments will be deleted. And I think that I agree with Ray, because if we have everything sort of like in this production state, the team gains visibility. And right now, for example, you could be seeing like my experiments, which right now I'm kind of running locally. So that's one thing that I want to like change ASAP. So please run it against production. It's actually good to do. And then, this is like how the thing is but it's super simple. Only in the OSO agent directory, you just need to do a UV run agent experiment and the experiment itself. Right now, this is text-to-SQL. This one is the text-to-SQL semantic. And this will basically run 36 questions and run the evals against them. It takes around 20 minutes to run, and I currently have it against Google. You can run it against Llama. It's not recommended. It's super, super slow. It's like 3-4 hours to run it. So try to use Google if you can. And I will.
Hold on. So the two experiment names that you have there, that
Yes.
defines which agent you're using?
No, it defines which workflow to run.
Got it. I mean, it's the same experiment and the same data points, but with two different workflows.
No, they're actually different experiments with different workflows. So let me share Phoenix. Here, this is Phoenix. Yeah. So basically here, if we go to the data sets, we have text-to-SQL semantic and text-to-SQL basic. So they are not the same, so they're like different. If we go, for example, this one semantic, we can see the results. We can see that 58% have like, valid SQL. And we can compare against like the basic one. Yeah, this bugs a lot actually. And the basic one, for example, has like 69. So one thing is like right now, the basic one is outperforming the semantic one. My guess is that the Braga combined with not having to use like, the semantic layer because it has some bugs still, it's what's giving that edge.
Hold on. These are the same exact examples uploaded into two separate data sets?
Yeah. Yes.
But if you do that, it makes it impossible to compare two different workflows on the same data set, right?
Yes. Yes. So that is the current flow that I was going with. But so you can compare them, but you have to do like the external approach. You have to get like, the JSON dump of everything and run some notebooks, which is what I was doing. I think that I will tackle this when I do the issue of like actually adding the context, like knowing which model, workflow version, everything, and that we will like consolidate them. It's in the making, yes.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I mean, especially if they're the same exact examples, it probably makes sense for them to be in the same data set, and then you just have some way of annotating like which experiment reflects what workflow. But yeah, okay, cool.
You were super quick. You were asking earlier about priority. I think that's going to be like my next step. I think that will enable us to have more correct results. Cool. So yeah, basically that's it. I will share super quick one last thing that it is for transparency with everyone. I will share 1 second. This is also MISC, and here, yeah. I will actually share the comparison between like the SQL and the semantic and non-semantic. So let me run everything. Yeah, I want this one. So right now, as you may see, the semantic approach is underperforming in some fronts. Efficiency is the same, but then mostly the model usage one is the one that's like worrying. I need to investigate why this number is so low. And in the others, I attribute this small difference due to like bugs in the semantic layer and the local registry being out of like date in comparison with production. But we have an issue, as I said, regarding concrete steps on how to make this more efficient and work better. And we'll tackle them one by one over the next sprints, and we'll make these numbers go up.
Have you had to take a chance to look at the evals and whether or not they're still correct?
So I did take a quick look. The one that I told you about, like the AST. So how it works basically, it does traverse the tree, but it does like a super naive comparison that it basically, if I find, for example, like an aggregation function, it literally says aggregation. If it changes like a select, it's select. So at the end of the day, it's just checking for types. And I think that's like, I think we can do better. I think we can like come up with like a better algorithm because maybe like, I don't know. I think it's just like too naive. I don't think just like putting all the types is like one, but yeah. I having an issue still. It's probably up next. So yeah, I'll just keep you updated.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you'll notice, Carl, that like this is kind of reflecting what I was saying earlier about the data sets. It would be really helpful for you to just take a quick edit pass over the data sets, because you can imagine Javi's workflow. Javi's workflow is like, this is what the number is. What do I do to make number go up? I'm going to make this architectural change. Edit, edit, edit. Oh, number went up. Things must be good. And what that's gonna miss is like if the examples are the wrong examples, he might be optimizing for the wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
It's all just an optimization problem.
It's just an optimization problem.
Everything is an optimization problem.
I saw your tweet earlier.
Yes.
Yep.
So yeah, that's mainly the state of the agent workflow right now.
Bobby, one thing that might actually be helpful, maybe 30 minutes once a week or something, you can just come over to my desk and you can say, here are the numbers that I want to move up or that have gone up, and we can actually just kind of do a quick like synchronous review of the things and flag anything that might be suspicious in the evals.
Okay, I'll definitely do that. Sounds good. Thank you, Carla.
Yeah, I think you need examples.
Putting stuff in. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that was basically everything on my end. Anyone has any question?
Cool. No, exciting. The only other thing that I would say is that I think you are really focused right now on optimization and improving the workflow. And I think what might be a good idea is to do everything outside of that first, right? So the performance sucks right now, fine. But it's not like ChatGPT said, I'm not going to ship ChatGPT until I have AGI, right?
True.
You ship everything else first. So like the documentation for Notebook Assist, the Docker image for the MCP server, trying to get the MCP server connected to a number of different agents, including Copilot, Cursor, et cetera, et cetera. Setting up all the experimentation infrastructure so that like, I can do side-by-side comparisons, like all of that tooling outside of the workflow first, and then come back to the workflow and try to improve it, right? I think that might make more sense because I feel like, improving accuracy is basically never going to end.
Yeah, that's why I like your approach of like having concrete, discrete tasks. I think that over like the next sprints, I'll probably be showing some to like make it better. But yeah, I would love to sync with you. I think last time we synced regarding like this agent, it was like most helpful, and it allowed me to like align priorities and just like ship directly and not like zigzag, as we said like in New York. So I'd love to grab you on your desk whenever you're free, and yeah, let's sync.
Yeah, I would say the same thing I would tell you the same thing I told Ruben, which is like, take one quick pass at the linear project and enumerate everything you can possibly think of that needs to be done, and then we can prioritize them together. That'll be a lot easier and faster than if we were to just have another high level abstract conversation.
Sounds good. Yeah. Okay, I'll do that.
Awesome.
Cool.
I'm curious, Ikaro, what are your thoughts on evaluating the agent under private data settings? Because none of these evals are going to be helpful for you, or none of these data sets are going to be helpful for you.
Yep.
But what we want to do is, I think, is make sure that the agent is good at using the context provided in the registry. Because the only way the user can um, talk with the agent is through context that we add in the UI, right?
I
And
see.
these contexts are will go to the registry. So we need to make sure that the agent is good at using that context, and we don't overwhelm it with
Yeah.
context from other places.
That's actually an issue I'm facing into. Is like it's really easy to like give more weight to like one part of like the context than to other, and we need to like be super like careful about like what we actually add as that context, because we are like maybe adding some parts that are like not as necessary, but they have much more weight than they need. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's a challenge.
That is a good point, though. I'm curious, like, if I had to read in between the lines, does that mean your strategy for private data is that the only way to query any kind of private data is making sure that it's properly annotated in the quote unquote ontology? Like, you have to make sure through our UX you're specifying relationships correctly. And if you're not, then there's no way that we can retrieve anything.
No, we can retrieve it, but we are gonna be like hostage to the agent, just like creating his own relationships. I don't know, by column name or something like that. Like there's no way to guarantee correctness, right? If they don't provide the context.
True.
Right, but the context, the primary avenue for how you want to contribute context is through the semantic layer, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Mhm.
I think, Carl, then one thing that might be good to get your thoughts on eventually is how you envision this semantic layer evolving over time. Like, the longer we can, like, I know that it will be useful eventually to allow people to specify their own entities, but the longer that we can get more people using the same, like, let's call it a common core of like semantic entities and then custom semantic entities, like the better our semantic core can be, the better the agent's going to perform. And so I'm not saying that like users, projects, artifacts, collections are the end all be all. Like there might be more things that we're missing that are related to the analysis that you're doing. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how that common core can evolve to satisfy as many use cases as possible. I'm trying to defer custom semantic entities for as long as possible, because once you start going down that route, it's really difficult for us to improve the agent.
Yeah, I think the one area that might be next is just the idea of like sources or kind of event typing, I suppose.
Mhm.
You're talking about like information provenance, like where did the data come from?
Yeah, so it's definitely that. Like the source thing, yes, is entirely that. But then I think the next one is really the knowledge of what metrics are derived from what events and from what sources.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have a separate issue for that already. I feel like that's orthogonal. So we have an issue for trying to return in PyOSO, like when you make a query, like what are all the metrics? Sorry, what are all the models? What are all the sources? And what is the most recent indexing and run of each timestamp? That's purely a provenance question. I'm asking a question more about the semantic model itself. And maybe you're saying what we have is actually good enough, which is fine. And you just want metadata about the models.
No, I'm not actually talking about the metadata about the models. let me give you an example, right? So just this morning, Larry, one of the researchers, said, "Hey, I want to experiment with some active user models, right? How do I do this?" And to do that, like, there's a standard semantic query where you'd say, okay, I want to look at projects, I want to look at collections, I want to go into the events blockchain model. But then you need to actually know which event type you want to grab in order for that to work, because there could be numerous event types in there and only one is going to be relevant to that type of query.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd want to look at the top level transactions in this case. If it was an account abstraction one, you'd want to look at the lower level ones.
Yeah. I mean, we do have event and metric semantic entities already, I think.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense. If there are others, let us know.
Yeah.
So just to recap, the 6 that we have are users, projects, artifacts, collections, events, and metrics. Right? Those are the 6 entities that we have, or objects in ontology language. And if there are more that we're thinking about, or a short list, let us know.
Yeah, okay. Event sources.
Event sources, I think, are just metadata on the event. Like, what kind of query would you have on an event source?
Maybe this is wrong, but like the way the funding data, well, maybe not.
Yeah, funding sources are artifacts, right?
Yeah, that's how it is now. I mean, something that tells you here are all the blockchain event sources, right? Otherwise, you have to enumerate through them.
It feels like we have this core, but then there's like some utility, right?
Yeah, like artifact types is another example of that. So there's certain things that I care about only for certain artifact types.
Like event, don't we have a table for like metrics? Just like not.
Yeah, sorry, Carl. In semantic layer language, these are dimensions of an object. So yes,
No, but
you want artifact type. That's just the dimension of the artifact, right?
But the thing is, I think he's asking like, we do have a dimension, but we also want a table that's just like an enum. It's just like, I want to know all the event types without querying this huge table,
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, anytime a dimension is an enum, we should make it very easy to get that dynamically through PyOSO, have it be pre-populated, like have it be suggested automatically via Notebook Assist.
Yeah.
Like there's just like, productivity things that we can do to help, like autocomplete, like, suggest some examples of autocomplete. I don't know. There's just like a bunch of, or documentation. We don't have documentation right now either. Like there's a bunch of productivity things around like what is the schema of any particular object that we just don't have very good facilities for right now. I don't think the right answer is to have like, a table just for it, probably.
Yeah, but yeah, thinking about performance, I think all of these should also be partitioned in the physical table, but I don't think we do it currently.
Oh, sure. Yeah. that's. Do we do any optimizations at the physical tables?
We do some for IDs.
Yeah, and yeah, that's true. And timestamps. Yeah. We can definitely improve those. Cool. Awesome.
Since we're here, I know we don't have Ruben, but it sounds like the time to go to Spain works. Javi, I think.
Yes.
Well, that would be.
Yes. So here's the thing. I saw your message earlier. Today, my brother actually has come from